I belong to a group that I didn't choose for myself. It was chosen for me by my parents, more specifically by my father in his early teens, long before I was born or could say the Pledge of Allegiance. A little more than 0.5% of children in America are in the same boat as me. Before I set up camp at Blair, I had already lived in Virginia Beach, Virginia, Monterey, California, Naples, Italy, Key West, Florida, Norfolk, Virginia, McLean, Virginia, and Honolulu, Hawaii. We Navy kids are commonly referred to as Navy brats, but in reality we are anything but. We are friendly, flexible, and funny, but we know when the bugle sounds to place our hand over our heart and pay homage to the United States of America. When we hear the roar of the F-16 fighter jet's engines overhead, we immediately think, that's the sound of freedom. When the national anthem plays and the singer belts out, or the land of the free, many listeners begin vigorously clapping and hooting and hollering, overshadowing the most significant line, and the home of the brave. Because of the group I belong to, I know that freedom is anything but free. I've met heroes, real life heroes, and I've played with their kids. These are men and women who volunteer to combat terror in hostile lands like Iraq and Afghanistan. Imagine standing outside an enemy compound with an M4 assault rifle, needing to get in, and knowing the target is behind the door with a gun pointed at your head. I think we can all now understand why soldiers wear brown pants. I have been fortunate enough to meet the family members of the fallen and hear their inspiring stories. They're the Gold Star families who stand on the tarmac at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware and solemnly watch their loved one being carried out of the back of a Boeing C-16 in a modest silver casket draped with the crisp American flag. These heroes lost their lives far from our shores, protecting people they will never meet and fighting for a cause they will never fully understand or solve. One of these heroes that I will never forget and whose values will stick with me for the rest of my time on this earth is Frankie Toner. Although I didn't know him personally, I had known of him because he worked in my father's battalion. I vividly remember leaving Mrs. Pye's 6th grade math class early to attend his Silver Star ceremony, the third highest military award. He lost his life on a casual Friday jog around Camp Shaheen when a member of the Afghan National Army opened fire on him and his friends. Unarmed Lieutenant Toder was fatally wounded in an effort to save his fallen friend, who was being shot at by the armed assailant. The Silver Star was posthumously presented to his young wife by Admiral Mike Mullen, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time, whom I was lucky enough to get a firm handshake and pat on the back after the ceremony. Although I have met many heroes, my parents will always be the bravest in my book. They are high school sweethearts and they love each other fiercely, yet they have been separated for years at a time during their 22-year marriage because of my father's deployments. Roosevelt Roads, Puerto Rico, Okinawa, Japan, Djibouti, Africa, Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and Muscat, Oman, to name a few. Outside our home in Coronado, California, we proudly fly an American flag. Before meals, we say prayers for our brothers and sisters fighting abroad. We eat those meals on a table purchased in Norfolk, Virginia, with chopsticks my father bought for my mother in Japan, on an Italian tablecloth. Our home is decorated with the treasures and memories, and our furniture is scratched and dented from its thousands of miles of travel across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. My father proudly wears the uniform of the United States Navy, and I am a proud member of a relatively small group of Americans who can say, my family has served. Thank you.
There are many adjectives that I could use to describe myself. There's the physical, blonde, blue-eyed, and kind of on the shorter side. There's also the not-so-obvious ones, anxious, untrusting of people, and actually kind of loud. However, there's one word that I've been struggling with for a while now. One word that many of you never thought I'd come out and say, especially here in this situation. This is going to be hard for me to admit, so give me a second. I'm negative. I know, this may come as a real shock to most of you, but it's true. I'm negative. Okay, in all seriousness, everyone here knows that I'm a negative person. This probably shouldn't be news to you, and if it is, then, well, you really should pay more attention. Something that might shock all of you is that I wasn't always this negative. It's time to tell the story of how I got to this point. Okay. I consider myself to have a pretty boring life. I was born in Stamford, Connecticut, but since birth, I've lived in Greenwich, a stupidly affluent town that, yes, is as ridiculous as the stories that you've probably heard. People have always assumed that I've been negative for my entire life, however, this is not the case. Growing up, I was extremely extroverted. I always wanted to be the center of attention, and I was always happy. People who have known me all my life have always wondered why I became so introverted and negative. I never told anyone my reason why until this year. Actually, only a few weeks ago. But here I am today, about to share it with all of you. In 5th grade, I started to get really anxious, but at the time, I didn't think anything of it. Around this time, my grandfather passed away. I didn't handle this news very well. Well, right when it happened, I did. I cried, obviously, and I was upset, but after a week or so, I was fine, and I continued on with my life. About a year after he died, I realized that he was gone and not coming back. I lost it. I had a complete mental breakdown in my room, screaming, crying, and breaking things. Everyone had told me he's gonna be fine, and he wasn't. I felt betrayed, so I shut down. I started to get even more anxious all the time and generally just sad about everything. Eventually, I felt like nothing. I literally just given up on emotions and decided that they're a waste of time, and this was only the beginning. Eventually, it got bad, so I won't get into detail. No offense, I'm sure you're all great secret keepers, but I keep this between my family, my doctor, and myself. Long story short, I was basically scared of everything all the time, and my mood is pretty much unpredictable. Any second, my mood could flip, and I'd go from perfectly happy to the total opposite. I didn't understand that there was something genetically wrong about how my brain worked. I'd get frustrated because these thoughts would keep me from doing things that I wanted to do, and I just wanted them to go away. Let's pause and have a quick lesson on mental illness. Scientists have found that people with these problems have a chemical imbalance in their brain. Chemicals such as dopamine, serotonin, and adrenaline all come into play. Let's look at adrenaline. Adrenaline, as you probably know, is what conducts a person's fight or flight instinct. It gets your blood pumping and gets you ready to go. People with anxiety disorders have too much of this chemical, so they have this feeling either all the time or maybe in certain situations. Something that a lot of people don't seem to understand is that these things all come down to genetics. These disorders are passed down through your family, and if you have one, chances are that a family member has one, and in the future, if you have kids, you will most likely pass it down to at least one of your children. I have struggled with accepting the fact that my brain is just different, and it'll always be like this, no matter how many people tell me to just get over it. I can't explain to you how annoying it is to want to be positive and to have a brain that's telling you that you don't deserve to be. Here's the thing. I may belong to the group of negative people, but something that makes me different is that I actually try to be positive. Don't believe me? Listen to this. I like watching my friends laugh at something that I've said or done. When I say something funny or do something stupid and my friends laugh, it makes my day a little bit better. I have a blanket with Snoopy all over it. People who live in Locke have probably seen me walking around with it draped over my shoulders. This is my anxiety blanket, and I bring it with me everywhere. It brings me a sense of security, which I need because unfamiliar situations spike my anxiety and sometimes can cause major panic attacks. I listened to my brother's chapel at Blair from his senior year in 2013. This is one that I don't think anyone knows about, but it makes me happy. I like to listen to his story and know that he's doing amazing things because he grew from his own problems. My favorite thing to do that really helps me is to learn about people. I notice little things about everyone. For example, Emma Hotch has 9,000 different laughs. One for a different kind of joke, one for an awkward story of mine, and even one for her own mispronunciations. Maria Gugi dances a lot. And I mean a lot. Like, if a Drake song comes on, you better be watching her because I swear it'll make your day instantly better. Lauren Christie gets really talkative when she's tired. She's a very introverted person, but for some reason, when she hasn't slept the night before, that just completely goes away. And let me tell you, it's hysterical. Oliver Foote and Carter Albers both have very contagious smiles, and you can't help but join in. These are little things that work for me. I know it makes me happy, and I know it makes me more positive. I know that these won't work for everyone, but there are so many things in the world that can make you happy. I'm still negative, but I won't let this negativity consume me anymore. This may not seem like much, but believe me, it's progress. So the next time somebody asks me, why do you always see the bad side in everything? I won't just say, sorry, I'm annoying like that. I can answer them honestly because it's simple. Anxiety and mood problems are things that I've struggled with and will continue to battle. They may make me more negative, but I won't let them stop me from being positive. Don't worry, I will continue to be that one person in the room that's a pessimist, but don't think for a second that I do it just because I feel like it. I can promise you I'm trying my best to be positive.
From the moment we're born, humans are placed into a variety of different groups. We are assigned a nationality based on the country we're born in, an ethnic identity based on the countries your parents were born in, and even a zodiac sign based on the month you're born in. Being categorized into groups, whether by chance or by choice, is a part of being a human in today's society. I belong to a variety of different groups. I associate myself with people who can speak more than one language. I am a member of the Blair student body, and I'm a part of the group of students graduating in 2018. But there are also other groups that I belong to that others have placed me in. Some might put me in the group of people that are more outgoing and willing to put themselves out there, which is justified as I've basically laughed and danced my way through the past year and a half here at Blair. Others might say that I'm one of the funnier people they know. These are all groups and parts of myself that almost anyone who knows me know that I belong to. There are, however, groups that I belong to that not even my closest friends or family know that I'm a part of. Had I been given this prompt a few months ago, I probably would have spoken about some of the aforementioned groups, the outgoing people or the funny guys. However, over the course of the past few months, things changed for me. I stopped telling jokes. I stopped enjoying the company of my friends. In essence, I stopped being happy. The cause of this change still remains somewhat of a mystery to me. I woke up one day in January and failed to find joy in the things I had before, and from there everything went downhill. I started spending a lot more time by myself, and I often took that time to think. I'd often reminisce on fun times with my friends back home, like managing to roll down an entire hill after falling off my skateboard, or even stupid things I've done here, like filling one of Oliver's pillowcases with shaving cream. But as I continued to spend more time in my thoughts, I began to realize how long it had been since I'd genuinely been happy. I hadn't noticed how much I'd been isolating myself up until that point. I would break off from other groups to go sit alone in my room, or I'd sit and stare, even if I was at dinner with a group of friends. And these things didn't seem like all that much of an issue at the time, until people started asking questions about how I was feeling. People would often comment on how tired I looked, which was accurate as I was losing a lot of sleep, sitting on my couch and questioning what was preventing me from being happy. While I completely appreciated the concern at the time, it was always uncomfortable when a friend would take the extra step of asking, "Are you sure you're okay?" I mean, of course I was. Or at least, that's what I told my friends, and even myself for a while. And in light of how I'd been spending my nights, other people noticing the same changes I had solidified the notion that I wasn't happy. This continued for a few weeks, and slowly the comments on being tired turned into comments on me seeming upset and even depressed. And the time spent questioning why I wasn't happy turned into an intense focus on not seeming outwardly upset. This attempt at pretending to be happy didn't change the fact that I was upset. It simply gave me the opportunity to make it through the school day. It also didn't change how I spent that time in my room in the afternoons, or after dinner, or in the early hours of the morning. I spent about 2 weeks staying up until 3 in the morning trying to figure out why it had become so difficult for me to just be happy. And one night in February, I struck gold. On this particular night, I was laying on the couch in the common room, and Oliver was on the beanbag on the floor next to me. And it hit me. While I've obviously been part of more general groups, like the cross-country team or Mr. Moore's A-block English class, I'd never settled into an actual group of friends. There are groups of people here at Blair that we associate with each other by default, based on the people they spend their time with. There are the South Girls, or the Lax Bros, or the actors, or the wrestlers. I, on the other hand, never had a set group of friends that I spent a large part of my time with. The fact that I had always had a large amount of distant friends as opposed to a close group of friends hadn't bothered me before. And in fact, it didn't even seem like a huge issue once I realized it that night. As my issues got worse, however, it was difficult because I didn't feel like I had any close friends to turn to. All of my depressive feelings were heightened once I started having panic attacks. My thoughts had managed to manifest themselves into a 10 to 20 minute physical attack that would often leave me feeling even more powerless than I already had. In the weeks that followed, I went out of my way to avoid people. I was constantly worried that I'd have a panic attack in front of one of my friends, and that I'd have to explain to them what had been happening over the course of the past few months. After a while, almost anything could cause me to panic. Nothing, however, was worse than the countless hours I'd spend in my room, placing people, even many of you, into groups. There were those that I felt that would be willing to help me if I ever needed it, and those that wouldn't. Those that would support me if I ever asked for it, and those that wouldn't. And I blame myself for not building a relationship with the people who fell into the latter categories earlier. In this time, things just seemed to get worse. I stopped doing schoolwork. I stopped eating, and I stopped sleeping. I hit rock bottom. I reached out to my mother, and she recommended that I reach out to whomever I felt comfortable with while I was at school, and that I start seeing someone when I went home. This conversation started me down the path to being officially diagnosed with depression and anxiety. The news was both uplifting and crushing. I was relieved to find out that I was not, as I'd previously thought, just losing my mind with no explanation as to how or why. But I was still upset because it hadn't changed anything. I would still walk around with my head on fire and no one would be able to see the flames. I would still be up until 2 or 3 in the morning and I would still be unhappy. I did, however, agree to start going to therapy on a regular basis, and that has proved to make all the difference. The past few weeks have given me the opportunity to learn the importance of being your own best friend. If it weren't for people like Jose, Luigi, Honesty, and Oliver, I'm not too sure where I'd be right now. So thank you. This experience has also introduced me to a variety of new groups. At one point, I belonged to the group of people who felt responsible for their pain. I belonged to the group who saw no end to their struggle. And I even belonged to those who use physical pain to distract them from the emotional. Recently, however, I've turned over a new leaf. I've learned the importance of being your own best friend. I've learned to enjoy my own company. I belong to those who struggle to overcome adversity and manage to come out on top. And I'm proud of all to say that I belong to those who can honestly say that they're happy. Thank you.
All right, I want everybody to close their eyes and think about a world where every word, number, musical note, and emotion is colorful. You can open your eyes, but that's my world. If you had to describe yourself using color, how do you think you'd do it? Some of you might say that you're a simple minimalist painting, and others might say that you're a shock of magenta on a clean white canvas. I'm going to paint you a picture of myself using the colors that I see when I hear my name, a rainbow abstract painting. The approach that I take when identifying my personality is equating a color of the rainbow with each of the traits that makes me Siena. So when asked to describe passion, the color that comes to mind is red. Red is the color of love and the color of anger, two very deep and confusing feelings. One of my favorite traits about myself is my passion for life and love. I'm a hopeless romantic who spends so much more time dreaming up scenarios that are never going to happen than actually doing productive things. I'm passionate about my art. I'm passionate about my family, and I'm passionate about animals. When my mind is set on something, there is absolutely no way I can forget it. Apparently, when I was 3, I saw my first magician. At the time, my only language was Spanish, so to me it was un mago. As it turns out, I became obsessed with the idea of becoming a magician and walked all around New York City in a red witch's cape for a good 3 months. I can't say that it was the most defining event in my life, but it definitely shows that from an early age, I have been one to favor passions. I'm a passionate person, and that's that. So, if I were to ask everybody what their favorite color is, it's a proven fact that 42% of you are going to say blue. It's true, I looked up the stats. And only 5% of you would say orange. In a very similar way, when asking students what they want to be when they grow up, most answered lawyer, businessman, teacher. Of course, there's different professions out there, but people tend to lead towards the safest option. Much like the color orange, rarely will people say that they want to be an artist. We live in a world where growing up, we're taught that it's hard to make it in the art world. And that's absolutely true, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. Just like the rainbow is empty without orange, the world is empty without artists. I belong to a group that can sometimes be forgotten, but the group can have some of the most interesting people that you'll ever find. Orange is important. So what's the happiest color? Without a doubt, it's definitely yellow. Whether it's like Sharpie highlighter yellow, a 70s smiley face, or a daffodil, this color means new beginnings and happy emotions. I'm an optimist. It's a hard choice to be happy all the time, and I do not follow my own advice. But I'd like to think that I'm happy more often than not, or at least I show people that I am. And that's definitely an accomplishment. Each day is a new day, and the first thing that we see outside is yellow. So at the risk of sounding like a motivational speaker, I'll say now that I belong to a group of optimists, and in that part there. So someone once told me that musicians perceive the world differently than others. They see things creatively, but more complicated than they need to be. I feel like green can be that way. If you ask someone what color their shirt is and they say green, buckle up because that could mean a lot of different things. I mean, there's seafoam green, Kelly green, turquoise, and don't even get me started on when you add blue to green. It's sort of the same response if you ask a musician something about their current piece. They'll have given you so much information by the end of that chat that you'll be wondering, what on earth is species counterpoint, and how does that have anything to do with the evolution of Beyonce? I'm proud to say that I definitely make things way more complicated than they need to be, just like the color green. So on a very different note, blue is a color most often associated with sadness and depression. I keep this part of me very closed off from the world, but that's lonely. Dealing with anxiety isn't easy, especially when you're the only one who specifically understands exactly what you're going through. Some people may have a better understanding of what you're feeling than others, but they'll never know exactly what's going on inside of your brain. So to quote a great musical, the sun will come out tomorrow. Even though blue does seem scary, dark, and unknown, it does carve the path that leads to purple, which is a much gentler color. Anxiety is hard, but it doesn't last forever, and you can get better. I belong to a group of struggling people, and for that reason, I may be feeling blue, but I'm definitely not alone. So on a much happier note, I have a fun fact. Back in the Middle Ages, the only people who were allowed to wear purple were the nobles, because it was widely regarded as like a royal color. So it's fitting that I should start this paragraph with that fact, because to me, purple represents intellectual curiosity. I can't count the number of times I've had to shamefully smile and explain to somebody that no, I'm not watching Orange is the New Black. I'm watching a documentary on Henry VIII and his summer palace in Middlesex, England. It's a cool place, by the way. I'm curious about everything. I have tried and done a mediocre job of learning sign language because I had absolutely nothing to do during my freshman year free blocks. I've memorized Shakespeare for the heck of it. And the most unfortunate thing about our society among our youth today is that it's frowned upon to consider yourself intelligent. You're seen as arrogant. But I don't think it's arrogant, though, to admit that you have a hunger for learning. Embrace the purple, guys, because school is cool. And learning about things that you love can be the most gratifying thing in the world. So, in the end, I've given y'all a long-winded explanation of how we should all embrace every little group that we belong to. I'm not just a musician, nor do I solely identify with having struggled with anxiety for the past decade. I'll be the first to admit that high school is the hardest thing that you have to do because you have to find your place. You have to find your group of friends, and you have to make an identity for yourself. But don't give in to the temptation of labeling yourself too early, because you might surprise yourself. When I was 12, using these colors, I would have told you that I was red, green, and orange. But today I can tell you that I identify with all of these colors, and I encourage you not to be afraid of discovering a new identity or color. Thank you.
It was hard finding a place to fit in as I grew up. I never found myself to be anyone who mattered for a long time. That is until I stumbled upon a certain special group of people who I'm proud to say have changed my life. So, what is this group of mine? My group is one not to talk so much, yet you'll know when they have spoken. My group prefers to read more than just words on paper. My group is always practicing the slightest detail for hours upon hours, because it's what they want, and it's something they strive to be perfect at. Most importantly, my group loves what they do. What they do is something so prevalent in all of our lives, and it fills my heart with joy that I am able to share it with you. My group is the musical group. And don't worry, I'm almost done saying the word group now. I'm sure you guys are sick of thinking about that horrible word as I am, after having written a super giant important speech about it. To be honest, I find it a bit sad that in order to complete this speaking prompt, I need to classify, I need to label. Worst of all, I need to choose for you the one specific type of people that I belong to, despite the fact that I'm still finding my way through life and through high school, and I'm always exploring new groups to join. I was almost unable to choose my group, for in the midst of all the different things we do up here at Blair, how am I supposed to confine myself to one? I like to consider myself academic, athletic, interesting, kind, funny, talented, loving, and most importantly, good-looking. Anyway, music has always been an important part of my life. Ever since I was little, I'd been influenced by many different types of music. First, I was born to the song Love of My Life by Dave Matthews and Santana. Likely more a song known by the teachers listening to me now than you guys. But it goes something like this. We go dancing in the moonlight, the starlight in your eyes, yeah. We go dance until the sunrise. You don't know we're gonna dance, 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 dance. Perhaps there's a meaning to these lyrics, but I can tell you it revolves around one thing: love. The love that may come with a child being brought into the world, so simple, so unconditional, and beautiful. Growing up, my dad played guitar, and I always listened with wonder as his fingers moved along so calmly and beautifully across the neck, without thought, without effort. All a muscle memory confined to his hands alone. Yet the movement within them felt so free, so enchanting and exciting. I could feel alive and relaxed at the same time. And love, always love. Meanwhile, the Dave Matthews persisted, as Mom, being Mom, would listen and sing along to her CDs in the car. My childhood influence eventually brought me to the decision to play the French horn in the 4th grade. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but from then on I was able to make my own music and appreciate it in a new way. I would soon come to learn that this music would lift me through times of sadness, places when I felt down. The era of middle school was a tough time for me. It was a place of great insecurity, yet it was also a place where I was first finding myself, realizing my own capabilities. Due to this great feeling of insecurity, I struggled through my days, begrudgingly for the most part. I went through morning classes where I always felt an urge to speak and draw attention to myself, yet I always seemed to come out laughed at and hurt. I thought of myself as unpopular and felt stupid and sad. I truly needed to pick me up around each midday to feel better. Luckily, that was when band class rolled around, and the feeling that came over me was just this wonderful wave of relief and happiness that washed over, and I felt amazing. I started to get good at the French horn, and was able to make friends through my skill, and finally my personality. All of class I played and I listened as the songs of the middle school band's mediocre rendition of the show tunes from the musical Annie filled my heart with joy. Through this musical group, I'd finally seemed to find myself, or at least a part of me to hold on to for some time. But enough about being my guilt trip, I'm not that important. I am in the type of music that I perform currently, one mere French horn in the sea of violins and saxophones and clarinets and trumpets and everyone else who sits behind me in this very auditorium and plays a wide range of orchestra music. Because music, while it can certainly be an individual pursuit, is often a setting where a group of people can come together, I'm sorry to sound cliche here, to create something bigger than oneself. It does not matter one's race, gender, age, or any other physical quality. This group that I claim to belong to does not think about any of that. All that matters is what we do. We go and make something beautiful. Or not beautiful. This is another reason why I love music. It does not need to be beautiful. Music can be happy. Music can be sad. It can be exciting. It can be dark and brooding. It can be relaxing, funny, offbeat, strange. Yes, music can be strange. I think we've all observed this, listening to that Sandbox percussion group that played back here a couple of weeks ago. But do me a favor and appreciate even that music, because it's all good. Please keep an ear open. Listen to every song you hear. Stop for a note or two. I promise there will be something you find interesting. Or not interesting. The sound you hear could be ridiculous, off-key, rancid. Great. Don't dismiss that feeling. Share it with others. That's what my group aims to do, is share. Of all the things I said, this is why I love this group more than anything else in the world. We get to share what we do, with all of you, and with each other. I loved when Emily Ansana and the Chamber Strings group played Canon, the one music-themed chapel. Brandy Zhang, thank you so much for hanging out with me and playing piano for the Wizard of Oz production. It meant the world that you were there for me, and it was without a doubt the most incredible thing I've ever been able to do. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience to be able to go on the orchestra trip to Europe last year and look around to see all my peers beside me, and the two best bandmates anyone could ask for, Willie Kaiser and Katie Peacock, at my side, and me thinking, there's no place I'd rather be. That's what this group means to me. So my group will play its music. We will love being together as we fix our sharps and our flats, shorten our staccatos, hold those fermatas for as long as we can, and come together in the largest crescendo you'll ever hear and then stop. and just love that sound. And I hope you all love it as well. Thank you.
I went to an international school almost my entire life. Most of the kids there were from Asian countries like Japan, Korea, and the Philippines. There were about only a handful of Caucasian kids from Poland, Canada, and the US. And even though most of the kids looked like me, I never felt like I really belonged with them. My friends' parents were managing partners from their firms, CEOs of the biggest corporations in Vietnam, and even diplomats. They drove to school with their personal drivers and slate black cars. They wore designer handbags and shoes to school, and their fathers wore suits to drop them off. I was not like them. I didn't have a driver. My dad drove me to school every day on his motorbike, and every day he wore his threadbare, faded denim blue electrician uniform and his scratched and washed out yellow helmet. The volume on his phone was always on full blast because he didn't want to miss any work emergencies. I remember looking at his face from the rearview mirror, toasted to chestnut brown from bathing in the sun 6 hours a day. In 7th grade, I asked my dad to drop me off 3 blocks away from home, and he asked me, "The entrance to the school is so far away. Are you sure you can walk there?" "Yeah, it's just a good exercise," I lied. I didn't want to tell him that I was embarrassed at the way he dressed, though I wonder if he'd known all along. There's a poem called Sophomore Blues, and it goes, "So here you are, too foreign for home, too foreign for here, never enough for both." The feeling that I never belonged anywhere followed me from Vietnam to America, except this time it's not only financial, it's my skin, my looks, my very DNA. The difference was embedded in me, and it was something that I couldn't change, and I distinctly remember this moment. Maybe you shouldn't take AP US History. My teacher said I would struggle a lot in this course, more than an American would, because I'm an international student. I had come to her for advice on my next year's course selections, and she was sitting directly opposite me, and I could feel her face bending down towards mine. I didn't look at her face. She said some more things, more reasons, but I stopped paying attention. It was all a blur. I felt my body burning up from embarrassment. The heat crept to my cheeks, and I think they must have burned red. The heat made its way to my eyes, and they stung, and I pressed my thumb against the palm of my hands over and over again until they became sore, and I remember feeling my palms beginning to sweat. All I was focused on was to send my tears backwards into my eye socket and away from her line of vision. I will not cry in front of her. I left her classroom. Maybe you shouldn't take AP US History because you're an international student. This was not the first time I was made to feel different, but when my teacher, someone who was supposed to believe in me, someone who I have the deepest respect, said those words, the difference felt so permanent. It wasn't just my peers that thought I was different, but even my teachers seemed to think so too. And I realized that to my teachers, my friends, and everyone here, I was fundamentally different from an American student. It didn't matter that I received one of the best grades in that class, or that I spent twice the time on our reading assignments to properly prepare, because I would never be as good as someone who was American-born. The teacher verified that because of my difference, I couldn't be or do or achieve the same things as my peers, and that was heartbreaking. For a while, the teacher's words convinced me that there was a justified reason for viewing me as something less than. English is my second language. I'm not American, so I won't have any background on US history. I saw the flow of this logic, but then I think about it, and I don't think there's a justified reason why I shouldn't take the course. I grew up bilingual, speaking English and Vietnamese. I can think, write, dream, and do math in both languages. I'm not less than anybody. Maybe I don't have a background in US history, but I was willing to work twice or thrice as hard. There's another moment that I won't forget. We were talking about freedom of speech, and a boy said to me, "You wouldn't understand what it's like because you're from Vietnam." He flailed his hands, dismissing me. His lips curved as he flashed a mean smile. He was half laughing as he said it. He thought he'd made a funny joke. His eyes surveyed everyone around the table, enjoying the approving looks from each person. He received laughter from everyone except me. I felt so belittled. That boy used my home country as a punchline to a joke. And right then, I flashed back to the times in middle school when I wanted so badly to be westernized. I wanted to be just like my school friends. I remember I just wanted to prove that I am no different. I was so proud that I didn't speak with broken English or that I ate with a fork and knife instead of chopsticks. I know that Vietnam is different than America. Of course we're different. But that boy made me feel as if Vietnam is different in a way that is less than. He pitied me, he silenced me before I even got to talk, and he made me feel as if my ideas didn't matter because I was too ill-equipped to argue a point, to stand up for my identity. He made me feel as if I couldn't possibly understand what it's like to live in a civilized society, that I was oh so lucky to be living in his world. He thought insulting where I come from was a joke. I've spent the better part of 2 years away from home, and I have developed a longing for family gathering to celebrate Tet, the Vietnamese Lunar New Year, for the hustle and bustle of Ho Chi Minh City traffic, and for the smell of fresh produce at the farmer's market. Vietnam, my experiences as an international student, daughter of an electrician, are things that I'm proud of. These are the things that make up my identity. And I wonder if that boy really understood the richness of my country. Would he still belittle me? I'm from Vietnam. I'm the daughter of an electrician. These are some of the first things you will know about me. I wear this as a badge of honor, and I'm not sorry for any of me.
Most of you guys know me as the goofball who's always joking around, trying to have a good laugh when possible. Maybe even the guy who can make a stressful situation a little less stressful, because one out of my many joke attempts actually made you laugh. But that is my goal. I want to bring more joy and laughter into this world, because there's no better way to put behind a tough day than with a good laugh. I've always been a jokester, throwing knee slappers at you left and right, and I assume I was probably already born cracking jokes. I think my mom's first words to me after I came out of the womb were, "My son, I want you to always give 100% on no matter what you do." And to that I responded, "Unless you're donating blood." Although joking's always been in my system, at times my comedic and goofball attitude did get me in some sticky situations. I think every report card from kindergarten to 6th grade always had a, "but he talks too much and is distracting others" at the end of whatever they said about me. Or that time I pretended to speak sign language on stage during school meeting, which ended up not being the best idea because Megan Grant is apparently partially deaf. Sorry, Megan. Almost every time I try to be funny while giving an announcement at school meeting, it ends up with Mr. Fortunato talking to me on how some people might have found it offensive, which granted was probably true, Mr. Fortunato. Almost every time. But as you can see, I'm still trying to find that balance between funny but not crossing the line. But lucky for you guys, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying. Why did little Johnny fall off the swing set? Because he had no arms. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Not Johnny. No, but don't worry. I know when to be serious and laugh at the jokes. Or at least I'm working on it. But when I feel like I've got the green light to be funny, I go for it. Now, because I couldn't have found a way to put this somewhere else in the essay, I'm going to get some of my required rhetorical devices out of the way really quickly. In alliteration, buy Bob's Brickle Bushes because brushing before breakfast breaks the bank. And a chiasmus, the right to bear arms is slightly less ridiculous than the right to arm bears. Okay, got those out of the way. Don't worry, I have a point. So what do all these jokes really mean? Well, in my group of jokesters, I might not know why the rest of them act in their comedic ways, but I can tell you why I always like to take the humorous approach on life. Yeah, there's actually some reasoning behind all the corny jokes. I strongly believe that laughter is the best medicine for anything. I'm not a scientist, but I'm almost positive it is impossible not to smile while laughing. And boom, you laugh, you smile, you're automatically happier. It's that simple. Now, if I can make someone laugh from a silly joke I just said, it's nice to think I made them a little bit happier. If I make you laugh and help you forget that 3.5 you just got on the test, that we both know you should have at least 5.0'd, but your teacher threw some real oddball questions on there that definitely was not in the study guide, and while taking the test, you panicked and you mixed up Stalin and Hitler. Oh, that's how you know you really messed up. No, not because you mixed up Stalin and Hitler. No, because this was an Algebra 2 test, and the correct answer was 2 pi, and you answered Joseph Stalin. Which isn't going to love that one, and it was a rough one, but if one of my dumb jokes helped you forget about that, then I take that as mission accomplished. Look, there's going to be some challenges thrown at you in life. Like, for example, yesterday I found out I had strep throat, but hey, I made the most out of it and got through it one strep at a time. Sorry. At times, things are going to get pretty stressful, but during those hard times, if you can find a funny cat video on YouTube or have a good laugh with your friends, things are going to feel a little bit easier. Look, if it's 11 o'clock at night and you realize you still have a ton of homework left to do and you're starting to stress out, remember this. A pregnant dog is a dog full of puppies. Yeah, I said a dog full of puppies. That's adorable, and that just made your night a whole lot better, and you're going to nail that history paper. Look, it's not rocket science. Laughing, giggling, cackling, whatever you want to call it, it's going to make whatever situation you're in a lot better. Unless you're at a funeral. But in all seriousness, we need to laugh more. We need to smile more, because Monday is going to go by a lot faster if we're laughing through it. And that's where me and my group of jokesters and I come into play. We're going to get through Monday. We're going to get you through the day. Even we're going to make you laugh, even if it takes a bunch of failed attempts. One of them are bound to crack a smile. That's all we want to do, because there's no better satisfaction than knowing one of our jokes made your day a little bit better, no matter what you were going through. And that's what we're here for, because I'm going to try my hardest to make life a little bit more cheerful, one laugh at a time.
Who we are as human beings. I, being the rebellious person that I am, have decided to make a speech about how not being in a group has affected me. Now, by not being in a group, I'm saying that I consider myself to be an introvert, a person that doesn't spend a lot of time in groups. It's a bit strange to do this, considering that the speech is supposed to be how groups have affected us, while my group is not being in a group. Fight the power. Now, to prove myself of my introverted status, I referred to the personality test that all sophomores were required to take for their leads classes. I somehow managed to score an 100% on the introvert portion of the test. This speech will genuinely be about how being an introvert, a person that likes to be alone to process things, has affected me personally. Not being in a specific social group has given me an interesting perspective on how teenagers act, as I am merely spectating other groups interacting while I internally process these said interactions. A better way to look at it is that I enjoy watching other people socialize, except I'd rather not engage myself with them. This interest has led me to something that I never really truly appreciated, and I might even pursue a career in, which is psychology. Not being in a group has led me to find something interesting, but it also has some downfalls. For example, it's harder for me to interact with people who barely see me due to me always being alone. An example of this is Michael Andreas, my prefect, seeing me on the Monday of the long weekend, thinking that I went home for the weekend. While in actuality, I was in my room alone while everyone was out enjoying the day. Even though that's probably one of the best weekends I've ever had at Blair Academy. Another downside for being an introvert is not having extremely strong connections with people. If you spend a prolonged amount of time alone, it prevents your relationships with others from prospering further. Being an introvert in a boarding school can be pretty difficult, considering that I live here. It can be very difficult to be alone, and because of this difficulty that I bypass constantly, I am consciously unable to form strong connections with others. Now, introverts can be perceived as people who are predominantly concerned with their own thoughts and feelings rather than external things. I believe that I embody this on a day-to-day basis. I spend a lot of time thinking and replaying events in my head and wonder how different inputs of a social situation can affect an already determined output. Think of it like when you're about to go to sleep, but you keep thinking about those embarrassing moments of your life and wondering why and how you could have changed them, except you do it all the time. Constantly doing it like I do can make me seem distant from the world, even though, ironically, I'm pondering the world at the same time. Now, some people here are unaware of the world around them, and one thing that I wish for them is to pause and recognize the world that they acknowledge intermittently. This is one of the reasons that I'm on the kayaking team. We're able to be alone in nature, and we can truly observe the beauty of natural occurrences like waterfalls or trees. Now, there's an introverted fictional character that I bet most of us know and love, the elusive and wonderful Waldo. You know, the guy hiding in those Where's Waldo's books, goofy hat and the striped shirt. Anyway, you may be thinking that I used to read those books for hours on end. It's actually quite the opposite. I never really liked them because they gave me a headache, but he's a really good example of an introvert. Though I can't directly speak of his personal feelings because it takes me forever to find him in the first place, I would like to analyze his actions that make him a wonderful character and how it can allude to the actions of an introvert. My first point is that he's alone all the time. Even though he's usually around other people in goofy costumes, he isn't truly interacting with them. In a way, he's a lot more dedicated to being an introvert than I am, and I feel that I can truly relate to him in that fashion. If I had the same amount of free time as him, I would probably hide for a long time. However, I don't agree with his fashion choices. His white and red stripes are as bright as Willie Kaiser's smile. As an introvert, I have observed many social interactions, so it's necessary to speak about a specific relationship. I generally spend my study halls with a couple, which is sort of strange considering I'm an introvert. My time with them has been really interesting. They have opened up my eyes to see the potential of human relationships. They help me realize that one can practically share his or her life with another person, which is sort of bizarre to me. And sometimes I don't want people to see what's inside of me because I fear that sometimes there's nothing there. But when I see this couple look into each other's eyes, I feel like I'm not entirely alienated from social situations, and I feel that that is truly beautiful. As I end this speech, I would like to challenge you. Spend some time alone, without much contact with others, and ponder the world around you. Embrace the significance of being alone, and keep your findings to yourself, as some people may not enjoy it. Analyze your surroundings, nature, couples, and everything else. Be like Waldo for a small amount of time, and maybe it can impact you like it impacted me. Thank you.